Hello, and welcome to the Times Higher Education webinar, Creating Flexible Online Learning Experiences to Support Non-Traditional Learners, held in partnership with Instructure. My name is Sridhu, and I'm the Deputy Editor for Brand Content at THE. I'm pleased to welcome two expert panelists to today's webinar. They are Greg Fowler, who is the Director of Solutions Engineering at Instructure, and Farah King, Global Growth Product Marketing Manager at Instructure, who is also a Unit Coordinator and Online Learning Advisor at Swinburne Online. Before we move on to the main discussion, I would like to mention that this webinar is being recorded, and we'll share an on-demand video and a summary article with all the participants after the webinar. We'll also be taking questions from the audience, so please post your questions using the Q&A function. I will now hand over to our panelists to take us through their presentations and share insights on how institutions can better support non-traditional learners through flexible online learning.
Thanks so much, Sridhu. Hello, everyone. My name is Farah King. I'm really excited to be here with you today and on behalf of Instructure. I am Global Growth Product Marketing Manager for APAC, so I work really closely with our product teams and our customers, really championing best teaching and learning practices and use cases in our region. With me, I have my amazing colleague, Greg, who I'll hand over to introduce himself.
Thanks, Farah. Hi, everyone. My name's Greg Fowler. I'm based out of Adelaide and been with Instructure for 8 years today, as it turns out. So as a solutions engineer, my team are really the product experts, and we get the privilege of being able to talk to customers, prospects about how our platform can assist with their learning needs. My background has been, or my career has always been in education, and my prior role was managing online learning for a university in Australia, and looking forward to today's discussion.
Thanks, Greg. So here at Instructure, we're reimagining technologies that turn teaching into learning opportunities. I also have a background in education. I still teach online, as Sridhu mentioned, for one of our universities here. So I get really excited that I get to use our ecosystem of products that connect the dots for educators and institutions. And we're always working to improve those educational experiences from K to 12, as well as higher education and in the workplace setting. So whether we want to admit it or not, we know students' preferences are changing, and there's a traditional K-12 pipeline that we see, but we're also seeing a big increase in non-traditional learners. So I work a lot with adult learners. That is definitely the way things are moving, and they're looking to move and cycle in and out of the education system due to needing to reskill or upskill, be relevant in the current job market. Those who have postponed higher education, for whatever circumstances, and now looking to return, possibly changes in family situations or even geographic location, which is what makes me excited about online learning in particular. So flexible online learning has really empowered and improved access to education, which I absolutely love, and we love here at Instructure. It's one of the things I really value, and we know these learners take a big leap, and they're met with needing to learn a new platform, needing to learn new content, needing to learn how to learn online, and it can be a lot. So we want to walk you through some of the things and some of the considerations that are really important for adult learners in an online space. I'll run through a little bit. Greg's got some great demos teed up as well to show you what that looks like or what that could look like for you. And so we're really excited to share that today. So the first thing we'll touch on is time and effort constraints with adult learners. They often struggle to balance work, family, personal responsibilities, and this can make it really hard to engage with a consistent learning schedule, which traditional learning sometimes has. As a result, they're less likely to attend live sessions. They need to multitask during their learning activities, and they can become easily overwhelmed when things aren't working the way that they would expect, or they're not having that seamless experience. And that can really hinder their ability to absorb the things that they need. We've designed our LMS with Canvas with flexibility in mind. So it has asynchronous learning capabilities. Learners can access their course materials. They can submit assignments, participate in discussions, all at their own convenience, fitting their learning into their busy schedules. Canvas has built-in functionality to easily allow for recorded lectures, downloadable content. We also have great mobile apps for teachers and students as well, so they can access and engage with the material in their own time, whether it's during a commute or late at night. And we also have a calendar and notification settings directly in Canvas, which can really help anyone with a busy schedule manage their time, providing reminders about what's coming up, what deadlines are approaching, and also just reducing the likelihood that they might miss something. I'm about to hand over to Greg in a moment, who's going to walk us through Canvas Catalog, which actually helps surface course offerings and broader pathways that can connect multiple micro-credentials into a formal qualification, which is what we know a lot of adult learners are looking into and pursuing. It provides a seamless enrollment experience, which can save institutions and our learners a lot of time. And so non-traditional learners can easily browse, search, discover the courses that they want. It can be in a professional learning setting, it can be in personal interest or upskilling. And this makes those learning opportunities really visible, really accessible. And so Catalog does allow for self-paced course offerings, which is really ideal for our adult learners. So I'll hand over to Greg to walk us through.
Thank you, Farah. Switching my screen now and going to run through a range of different catalog environments. So at the moment, we're looking at Canvas. If we take a step back through the process and imagine that I don't yet have a Canvas account, we can actually browse for courses that are offered for organizations using our storefront product catalog. We'll go through a range of different ways that this can be branded and used. This particular environment here is looking at classroom-ready resources. So we're actually allowing staff or teachers to browse through pre-built Canvas courses. So this is, again, a different use case than enrolling into a course where they might receive a micro-credential. This is actually allowing for the searchability, discoverability of teaching resources. In this particular course, we've got all of the different information that we might need to display to teachers about what they're going to be enrolling into. And when they click Get Access, that can run them through the process of actually signing up or logging into the environment and enrolling directly in those courses. In a simpler style of catalog environment, this here is for mandatory teacher training. And so we can scroll through these listings. Two types of listing. We can either have a one-to-one relationship between one of these catalog tiles and a single Canvas course. Or in this first example here, mandatory leadership training program, this is actually 5 courses that have been bundled into a single purchase. In this case, it is a paid purchase, but we can also see here that some of these enrollments are free. So the user will get instant access, no fee to pay. They can create their profile, or we can also ensure that this is actually behind a login. So we're only making these courses available to our existing user base. If I come down to one of these courses, we can click into the ICT Insights. And in this case, we can see that this course is free, it's self-paced. And so for this self-paced course, it may be that there's actually no collaboration. It's really just there for teachers to progress through at their own pace. And they would be using things like auto-graded assessments and providing a lot of resources and videos for our teachers. For this particular use case, we can either enroll directly in that course, we can build up a cart of purchases, or in the context of a manager purchasing training on behalf of their team, we can actually leverage bulk enrollment as well. This is where I can purchase a specified number of seats into this course and then distribute those licenses myself as the purchaser. You'll also notice, though, that on completion of this course, we'll get awarded a credential, a badge. And so we can see all of the data behind these micro-credentials here. But you also may notice that we've got this element called pathways in this particular listing. A pathway is where we can see how this course sits in a broader pathway of study. In this case, we're actually leveraging this pathway to help teachers become certified. And so this will run through all of the mandatory elements of their teacher certification, including things like obtaining a first aid certificate, participating in professional development and mandatory trainings. And once we do meet all of the requirements within these relevant nodes, we'll be awarded another form of credential. I call it a macro credential, basically just a bigger award where, based off of the daisy chaining of these credentials that we've developed as an organization, the teacher will then automatically be awarded this authority to teach credential. In this case, we're talking about a K-12 context, but we'll come back to this technology to show you how that's built behind the scenes, and we'll talk about some other use cases that are available as well. The final use case that we'll talk about from Catalog before we actually jump into Canvas is one that we can actually, or you can go after this call and explore yourself. So Canvas Network is a public space where we offer courses either that Instructure has developed or some of our partners around the globe have also contributed into. And so we can scroll down and see courses like the University of South Florida, who have course enhancements via Gen A as a course that they've developed within Canvas, and we offer through to the community. Clicking on enroll will go through a really simple process of requiring name and email address. But also at this level, we can really specify what information we're capturing from our customers. This might be information that we automatically pipe back to your CRM, such as Salesforce. And in this case, we've got quite a few custom fields. So we're asking for the default information that's always required. We can then ask custom fields like select your school from the list below. I've spoken to my school principal and been approved for this PD. All of these fields are custom and available for you to alter within your catalog environment. So Catalog is a really flexible tool. We see it being used for micro-credentials, for professional development. We see it being used in a university context for student mandatory training as well, a wide array of use cases. If I jump into my Canvas environment, I wanted to show you a range of different courses and styles of course as well. We'll start with a very simple course. It's designed to be completed in a matter of hours rather than days or weeks. And to correspond with that style of use case, the navigation is all handled via these buttons at the top of the page. So a user can come in, read through the course overview and the objectives, and then progress through to the main learning content. Within learning content, this can be combinations of text, files, multimedia, third-party tools, really whatever you would like your end users to see. But one thing that I really wanted to highlight is our integration with a Microsoft tool called Immersive Reader. So regardless of whether you use Microsoft at your organization, this allows you to, or your students, to leverage a Microsoft Immersive Reader. And this provides a range of different benefits depending on what your students are wanting. First thing that you'll notice here is we can come through to any of the text and have that read back. Obviously, in this case, we're reading it back in English. We can adjust our preferences in terms of look and feel. So a yellow background with black text might be better for users with dyslexia. We can also do things like highlight grammatical elements of this resource. Well, the thing that I really like to show off within Immersive Reader is its language translation capability. So there are around 100 different languages supported by Immersive Reader. I'll randomly select one from the list today, and then we can translate the entire document, or we can translate word by word as well. The majority of these translations also support playback, and so then I'm not even sure what language I've selected here, but we can get that read back to us using that AI translation. If we go back to our resource, we can see that there's a range of different elements to this. So we've got embedded files. In this case, the student can actually look at this PDF, or this might be a PowerPoint presentation Word document directly within their browser. That's probably more important when we're thinking about mobile access. A student from their mobile doesn't need to have any specific software installed. I can ensure that I'm on the train reading through my PowerPoint presentation on my iPad, my Android phone, using our mobile apps. And it may be that we actually download that course for offline viewing because we're not certain that we'll have that reliable internet access on the train. The next resource that we've got here is a really simple example. It's a YouTube video, but we've embedded this within our video framework. And the dots that you'll notice within this video timeline are comments that have been left by my peers. And so when we play that video back, we'll start to see the comments appear top right-hand corner of the screen. We can scroll down and see all of the timestamp comments, reply to any of these, or if I start to type in that comment field, the video will pause and keep that timestamp at that 20-second mark. So really just trying to change that video from being something that's quite passive to something that we can actually ask questions and collaborate on. If I was in here as a teacher, I'm also able to ascertain the insights as to who's watched that, how far through that video file they've played back. And that goes all the way down to the individual student level. So really useful for broad analytics to see how successful that video resource was. Is it being replayed? But also all the way down to that individual student level. Is there one student that keeps skipping through the entirety of our videos? If I keep scrolling down in this content, we then have external content provided by a SCORM package. This is not the best example to show you, but just wanted to highlight that we don't necessarily need to build directly into Canvas. We often have um, customers who have existing SCORM content, or maybe they've purchased third-party content that comes in SCORM that will upload really nicely into Canvas as well. Up at the top of the screen again, we then are going to move through to a discussion forum. So share your experience. This discussion forum is completely optional within this context, but we can scroll down and see all of the discussion instructions and all of the posts that have been left. There's a range of different ways that we can configure this, from being graded to being entirely optional, or even things like anonymity. So if we're asking people to reflect in a discussion, we can enable partial or complete anonymity to ensure that our students are feeling comfortable to participate in this. We'll come back to discussions a couple of times because they're really valuable education tool, and because of the flexibility of this, we can offer small group discussions, graded discussions, a whole range of different setup configurations as well. For this particular short course, though, the main thing that we're asking our participants to do is this knowledge check. Once the student has achieved 100% in this knowledge check, they will automatically be issued a badge or a micro-credential. And we'll come back to this, but these micro-credentials can be shared onto social networking sites. They can have things like expiration dates applied. They can come with certificates as well. So really, really flexible. And because we can build those micro-credentials into those really flexible pathways, we also see this being a really nice tool for organizations to rationalize their micro-credentials into a collection that can make more sense through to the workplace as well. But as I scroll down, I've attempted this knowledge check a few times in my demonstrations, and we can see I'm actually getting worse, but that's okay. We can come back to any of the prior attempts to see all of the feedback that's been generated automatically from this Canvas quiz. And we can see a range of different question types, from multiple choice, true, false, through to more interactive drag and drop style of questions. For this demonstration, we've enabled all feedback types. So we're seeing what the correct answer should have been. But at this point, we can also provide additional context and feedback through to the user. It might be that we want to develop feedback specifically to whether the question was answered incorrectly, and that might provide external links or links through to the Canvas resource that will help them understand what the correct answer should have been. So in this case, this knowledge check, being self-paced, it's not an exam style, is quite flexible, but we can also configure that with things like external tools like a lockdown browser, additional security, passcodes to enter. Again, really flexible in the way that we deal with traditional and non-traditional use cases. I can take this quiz again because we've set this up so that unlimited attempts are allowed. Obviously, that can be limited to 1, 2, 3 attempts, whatever you would like. And when this quiz loads, all of the questions that we'll see here are auto-grading. So again, for the student, rather than having to wait for that feedback from a staff member, they can get immediate feedback. In this case, they can reattempt straight away. And as I mentioned, once we do meet the criteria defined behind the scenes as to what success for this course is, we'll then automatically be issued a micro-credential, and we'll receive an email confirming that as well. This is that drag and drop style of question that we were talking about a few moments ago. So we can drag and drop with our mouse, but also if I was unable to leverage my mouse for drag and drop, I'm using my keyboard now to adjust the implement drag and drop option. So just one of those accessibility considerations. Canvas itself adheres to really strict accessibility standards, and that's one quite easy way of me demonstrating that. I won't bore us with all 8 questions for this demonstration, so I'll click submit. And when that does auto grade, we'll see that same level of feedback that I saw that I demonstrated a few moments ago, and 0% today, so that's a good streak. I'll click return and just give you a quick view into the badges and credentials item here. This is where a user is able to see all of the micro credentials on offer in this course. And if this course is attached to a learning pathway, we can also visualize that pathway directly from Canvas at this point as well. But we'll see here that I have not been awarded this credential because I still haven't achieved 100% on that knowledge check. So this is a really simple course. I've almost showed you the entirety of that particular course. And what I might do now is move on to a different course to give you a broader sense as to what we can do in terms of collaboration as well. So I'm going to navigate through to my course down the bottom here called Effective Management. And we'll spend a little bit of time throughout this demonstration in this particular course. One thing that I did want to highlight as well, so integration, we looked at things like Microsoft Immersive Reader. At the bottom of this course, though, we're seeing a Lucid chart integration in Canvas. We integrate with over 1,000 different external partners. What we really like to highlight is how flexible that integration is. At a minimum, what we're providing through to our students is single sign-on. They're not needing to have a separate account and log in directly at Lucid. That's automatically given me access to that Lucid chart. But this will work with things like plagiarism detection. It will work with video platforms. Anything you can think of generally will integrate using an educational standard and display really nicely through to users, regardless of which device they're using. If I navigate through to the module link on the left-hand side, in my micro-credential course, this wasn't available to students because there wasn't enough content in there to warrant access to this modules area. But this is generally used to chunk content into different topics, modules, weeks, however you would like to structure your course. But what I want to look at today is assignments and discussions within this particular course. This assignment has yet to be submitted, and we can see all of the instructions for this task. And down the bottom, all of the submission types that have been enabled for me to submit into this assessment. For demonstration, I'm just going to give a quick example of how we can record audio and video into Canvas very easily as well. So really giving students the flexibility of what they're submitting into the platform. And we're not just requiring very basic text submissions from our users or uploading a PDF document. When I do submit, that will then alert our teacher that this is available for grading. And the teacher will be able to instantly grade that using our SpeedGrader interface. What I did want to show from a teaching perspective is if I access this same course, what we can do is actually look at our course pacing options. So course pacing is the inbuilt tool in Canvas to allow for rolling enrollments. Rather than having fixed due dates on assessments, for this particular course, users can enroll and catalog any day of the week, and they will get specific due dates based on when they enter the Canvas course. So here you're seeing, for example, if we started this course on the 1st of June, the expected end date is the 11th of July, roughly 6 weeks to complete. And Canvas will automatically allocate due dates based off of this plan that we've developed. So 4 days beyond entry, we'll have our first due date assigned, and then another 5 days, we'll move on to the next assessment, so on and so forth. And that will automatically apply through to our users. But if we did need to override that for a particular user, we can come into any of our students and override their specific due dates as well. This will take into account things like public holidays and any dates that your organization wants to avoid submissions occurring. For some of the efficiency at a teacher lens, we'll come into our SpeedGrader interface shortly, but the task that I just submitted, we've written out all of the assessment instructions, and one of the tools that we're going to launch into our production environment is the ability to take those assessment instructions and actually generate assessment rubrics directly in Canvas as well. So this is coming to Canvas in a couple of months' time, and just one of the areas that we see AI being really useful through to our academic population. These rubrics can be graded using comment banks, text files, a really easy way of assessing students, and we'll show you that interface again shortly in this demonstration. Farah, I'm going to hand back to you for our next item.
Fabulous. Thanks, Greg. I really love that you've highlighted in particular for our adult learners that flexibility that is super key for them and the ability to really be able to showcase their learning more immediately with things like badges and catalog. I know a lot of the adult learners I'm dealing with and a lot of the professions that we're dealing with here in Australia are looking for ways to recognize students and potential graduates more readily and quicker. So we have a lot of professions that are changing in terms of allowing people into the profession before graduation. And so having things like a credential really highlights that ability to do that more seamlessly and meet those job-ready graduate capabilities that we have here in Australia. The next thing we're going to touch on is barriers to access. And again, adult learners, this is a big piece for them in terms of that accessibility, inequitable access to devices, high-speed internet, and digital literacy tools, which can really affect adult learners. Greg touched on the number of apps, over 1,000 apps that we can integrate with, because the reality is, as an adult in a job, most likely, you're not working in an LMS, you're working with a number of tools in your day-to-day, and we want to make sure we can easily make those tools available for you within Canvas and our ecosystem. We know these particular barriers can really prevent accessing course content. It also really hinders the navigation and that learning experience. So when learners are left behind due to some of these technical issues, we know they can be quickly disengaged or just feel deflated. So here at Instructure, we're really committed to ensuring that that experience in Canvas is highly accessible, very user-friendly. That is an immense priority for us. So Canvas is a cloud-based platform, making the need for powerful, expensive devices and accessing, high-speed internet not necessary. You can run Canvas on anything that has internet. And we also have our student and teacher app that I mentioned earlier. So this really helps cater to learners who may primarily rely on their mobile for internet, those who are on the go, commuting, or just have really busy schedules. So here at Instructure, we continuously work on optimizing Canvas for lower bandwidth environments, ensuring that learners can work within a lower internet connection, they can access their course materials without those load times. And Canvas also adheres to WCAG level 2.1 AA standards, so making sure that accessibility is always front of mind. Greg covered Immersive Reader previously, so that's a really big feature for us. We also enable translations, both within Immersive Reader and within Canvas, keyboard navigation, customizable text. We've also just rolled out a dyslexia-friendly font as well, so that's something learners can toggle on and off at their own use case. They don't need an institution to do that, really promoting that self-paced learning that they really need and that flexibility. We know also this does help address the various digital literacy levels that we're dealing with when they can navigate their platform more effectively. I'll hand back to Greg, who's now going to walk us through some of our accessibility considerations.
Thanks, Farah. I want to show you off our mobile applications, and probably the way that I'll start is actually by clicking on this profile option for this student, Garth Bryant. And what we're able to do as a student is actually scan with our iPad this QR code, and that will log us into the mobile application specifically to my profile. And the mobile applications don't require re-authentication by default. Your organization can request that students re-log in after a set period of time, but our default is that those mobile apps will continue to log that student in. When we have scanned this, I'll switch over to my iPad now. The first thing that I'd like to go through, which I mentioned briefly earlier, is that we do have an offline mode for these mobile applications as well. So top right-hand corner of the screen, we can manage our offline content, and this is where we can select which courses we would like to have synchronized for offline viewing. And this will periodically synchronize those courses. So any updates that have been made when I am back in internet connection will resync to my device to ensure that I'm always looking through the latest information. Within these iPad apps as well, should we need to, we can enable accessibility options that are built into the iOS and Android platforms to enable voiced navigation as well. I can use things like click on short course, and the iPad would then load my short course content. So rather than having to leverage a pointing device or some sort of input, we can actually just speak our navigation through to Canvas as well. This is looking through that same course that we looked at earlier. So my short course, we can come through to share your experience, the discussion that we briefly loaded. This time I'll navigate down to the bottom of the page and we can see the option to reply to the post, or I can actually come down to an individual post that's already been made and either quote the text that's in there, or I can just reply broadly to that. From here, we've got the ability to leverage tools like iOS's voice to text, and that allows me to speak my comments into Canvas. And we see this readily used by students as well as teachers when they are providing feedback into our platform. From the content editor, we can also use tools like the media upload and recorder. So that same functionality that we looked at earlier when I was recording a assessment, we can do directly from our mobile device as well. And so I can click start recording, stop when I'm done, and then post a media reply back into Canvas. So really quick and sort of expected, more sort of social media-like interaction that we're looking to deploy through to our mobile apps. They're really well designed to suit the mobile experience, but they're absolutely optional for users to leverage. They can log in directly through to the browser and have that same level of accessibility. But what we can get with a mobile device are the notifications as well. So from Canvas, we can configure how it and at what frequency it is communicating with us. But for things like assessment, feedback, and inbox messages that are posted, we can get push notifications directly through to our iPad, our Android device, for that really instantaneous style of alerting. Also, same apps apply for teachers as well. So from my to-do list, the one interface that we often like to show is our speed grader interface. So I bring this up because what we're providing here is a really nice interface where we can annotate student submissions, like you can see here. But what we're doing when student submits is actually converting those files through to a format that is text recognizable and allows us to leverage things like annotation directly within the mobile device. Any of the annotations we do add can attract a comment. And as I mentioned, that same functionality is available for teachers where we can speak our comments back into Canvas. This particular assessment, we've attached a rubric to, and so on the right-hand side of the screen, we can provide that really granular feedback if we are requiring students make submissions into Canvas. But overall, we can also attach comments. So whether they be, pre-saved comments that I've added to my library, or again, it might be that we want that personalization, adding video and voice through to the feedback we're providing through to our students. But it's a two-way process as well. Students can ask questions. They can actually reply directly through to a single annotation comment as well. And so just giving students greater flexibility and communication through to their teacher or their facilitator. Back into my, apologies for skipping around my Canvas environment a little bit there. Back into the Canvas interface, one of the options that we have down the bottom of the screen here is to use a high contrast user interface. This is a really easy way to demonstrate an accessibility option in Canvas. If I reload my page, you'll now notice that the branding that we saw earlier has been replaced with a high contrast user interface. All links are now underlined by default, and we're overriding some of the organizational settings here to ensure that that is the highest possible accessibility, color contrast ratios, etc. When we are designing content as a teacher, we also have access at the bottom of the screen here through to an accessibility editor. So as I'm designing my own content, if I'm not aware of accessibility considerations, Canvas is actually going to scan my content and alert me to things like color contrast ratios, images without alt tags, all of those common accessibility concerns that may exist in content developed by the organization. Something that Instructure is currently working on is the ability to look at that across an entire course, and then using AI suggestions to resolve accessibility concerns en masse and do things like convert files through to Canvas resources natively. So rather than having large or inefficient Word documents, they can be converted through to a Canvas native resource. In the context of accessibility, if we are needing to provide accommodations through to our participants, we can also do things like assign content through to specific groups of users or override due dates as well. So rather than having an assignment due on the 5th of June for all of the class, we can override that to an individual user or a group. And within a Canvas quiz, we can also do things like provide additional time or attempts for an individual or group of users. So accommodations as well that we're bundling into this concept of accessibility. Farah, I'll hand back to you to talk about how we're looking at engaging, how we're looking at increasing engagement and focusing on retention in Canvas as well.
Fabulous. Thank you, Greg. So this one's probably another really important one, particularly when we're dealing with adult learners. Teaching online, I can tell you, life always gets in the way, and being a student online, life will always get in the way. We're grown-ups and this happens. So we know maintaining attention and motivation can be really challenging. There's always competing priorities. So with course content, if it feels disconnected, if it's not relatable to something that is professionally applicable or personally applicable, the learning can feel like a burden. And so we know rather than students seeing what they could get out of this, they really lose interest and they stop participating, which is what we don't want. Canvas offers a really rich suite of tools to enhance that that engagement and retention. So instructors can leverage multimedia, some of the things that Greg has started to touch on. We've had some great questions around Studio as a video platform, which is also a fabulous way that both teachers and students can interact and create content or, share things across the platform. Discussion forums and collaborative assignments, as well as peer review features, really help foster that active participation. And there's a big sense of community where we're able to connect learners. So that learner to learner engagement is equally important, if not more important than the learner to teacher engagement as well. So we want to make sure that that is something they can do asynchronously. The platform also supports gamification elements like badges that we covered previously, progress trackers, which can intrinsically motivate learners who are driven by those things. They can see those clear milestones and they get that clear recognition, which is really important. And furthermore, Canvas's flexible assignment types that Greg started to show us really allow educators to design authentic and meaningful activities. Because again, if that purpose is not there, it makes it really hard to engage those students. So it really helps build those real world scenarios like professional learning projects or something that they can take into their workplace and really remove that burden or that feeling of an additional thing to do. We also have a lot of analytics in Canvas and a lot of analytics tools. So this is really helpful for institutions to track learner engagement and progress and have a look at where additional support might be needed or motivational nudges. We have a particular tool called Intelligent Insights in Canvas that really allows admins to surface students in need of attention, define specific learning and engagement criteria, based on specific learning engagement criteria, and really enable that proactive intervention to support learners. Teaching online and learning online can feel really isolating. So we want to make sure that Canvas provides that ability to surface those learners proactively, and teachers can respond to them proactively as well. Catalog also has built-in reporting on registrations, revenue, course completion, so admins get really valuable insights as well without needing to do a lot of manual data collection and analysis. I'm going to hand back over to Greg, who's going to walk us through some of those things.
Thank you, Farah. So the first thing I'd like to talk about in the context of student engagement is the way that we can support group work within Canvas. So within this particular Canvas course, Garth again, using my star student, if I scroll down in the screen, you'll notice bottom right-hand corner here, we've got a course group. So accessing that course group, this might be something that's automatically been allocated through to me, or it may be that this is something that I've self-selected to be enrolled in as well. This provides the group participants all of the Canvas course tools outside of assessment. So we can post announcements like you can see here, create those pages of information. Those small group discussions are available here as well. So I can begin a new discussion and work with my peers asynchronously. We can upload files, and then in collaborations, this is where we can create collaborative documents using Office 365 or Google Drive. The example I'm loading here is a Google assignment created in Slides. And if we go through that process of the Google Drive integration here, this allows me to create that document, whether it be a doc, a slide, sheets, forms, etc., and invite all of the collaborators within this group as well. So here's a document that we were working on together. This is something that we can then submit directly back into a Canvas assignment when the time comes. This, though, allows the organization to provide that space for the students to collaborate together without them needing to go to an external source. And we can also jump in and out of these spaces as the teaching team to see what sort of participation's occurring within there as well. When I'm back within my Canvas course, the modular view within this particular course allows me to see my progress throughout and see what elements I've completed, what is still outstanding. We can see here that my course overview module is complete. We can collapse all of these modules to get a greater sense as to how long this course is or what sort of content exists within. But we'll also notice here that there are prerequisites. So these prerequisites handle the way that we can stagger students throughout a course. You'll notice that while Module 1 is open to me, because I've needed to complete all of the elements of course overview, I still haven't completed some of the requirements, such as scoring at least 40 within this particular quiz. And so the subsequent resources are currently locked because I haven't met that requirement. But then this particular module was also locked from view because I hadn't met all of the requirements as well. Another style of interaction and engagement that we offer is around video quizzing. So rather than just enabling that commenting interface for our own multimedia files, or in this case, yet again, we're looking at a YouTube video, we can actually create quiz questions that will be presented through to the student. Again, they get that immediate feedback, and this is embedded directly within a resource. So we often see this being used as knowledge checks for the student themselves rather than a summative task that we're grading, but we can also pass that data back into the Canvas gradebook. From a teacher's perspective, they get really granular data as to how the entire course or an individual student's responding to all of these questions as well. From that teacher lens, if I access this same course, we'll be able to see, I'll disable that high contrast interface. We'll be able to see how we can develop the course leaderboard that Farah was mentioning in the micro-credentialing products that we have. So apologies, I have this course loaded here. When we come into credentials, this is where we can configure how that course will offer micro-credentials, whether it be based on grade, completion of modules, or submitting into something like a quiz. In this particular case, a student can receive up to 4 micro-credentials for their completion. We can see that currently 2 out of the 15 participants have been awarded a single credential here. And if we click into that, we can see all of the requirements and the individual data for users around who's being awarded that and who hasn't. But as I mentioned, we can also enable a leaderboard. So if we do want to motivate our users by allowing them to see how they're placed within the Canvas course, all of these users are aliased. And so Garth here will be displayed to all of the students as Rejoicing Wild Boar. We can see that he's currently received 1 out of the 4 possible points. So rather than having all of these badges worth an equal amount of points, we can also customize one to be worth 5, others to be worth 10 to help with understanding the weight of that particular micro-credential as well. Farah mentioned the data that we have available as well within Canvas. So if I come into a different course altogether and we load our analytic product, we'll be able to have a look at the way that we can leverage Canvas data to see which students may require attention. So students in need of attention, this allows us to define criteria that we're wanting to monitor. In this case, we're looking at minimum score, number of late submissions, or potentially missing submissions. So what I'm going to do is say, if a student has more than 1 missing submission and they haven't accessed Canvas content in the past 5 days, who are those users? So 19 of my students meet those criteria. I can message those students in a BCC style fashion for some really fast engagement from the teaching perspective, but with a really personal message that's going to be sent through to the student. As Farah mentioned, we've got really a large range of analytics for administrators as well. Our most recent analytic tool that we've launched is using a large language model to help turn questions that you're posing through to the Ask Your Data product into tables of data and graphs as well. I can ask any question of Canvas here, and this tool will try and translate that into a query that can render data for us. We can always refine our query after we've posed a question. I use this quite often. So yesterday I asked what are the most active discussions by course. It will generate a table of data with links through to each of those individual courses. And if that's data that's interesting to me, I can pin that to reuse and relook at a later date. Within my pin boards, I've got a range of different dashboards that I can view, and everything from as basic as what are the average log-on days, and we can see there over time that Tuesday seems to be the most popular day for logging into my Canvas environment. We can download that data, view it as a table, or always go back to the original query that we asked of the product to interrogate that further. Farah, I'll hand back to you now.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. We've actually had a couple questions in the chat that I was hoping you could help with. One of them was actually about the buttons that you were sharing earlier when you were looking at the design thinking course. And there was a question around how those can be created. There was mention of City Labs, and I've also just quickly touched on being able to do this directly in Canvas as well. I'm not sure if you have a minute to show those.
Yeah, so don't have the ability to show City Labs itself. Those icons are now part of my Canvas environment, so I can come through and reuse those across any course. If I access that from my teaching permissions, where is my short course? Basically, I've copied and pasted those buttons across into every page at the top of the header, but we can also develop that as part of our template. So I believe this particular course has a similar look and feel. When I edit this, we've got a button editor capability within Canvas. These were created as part of my default templates that I use. And so actually in this case, the text is built into the buttons, but equally we can just upload those images into Canvas as the icons and then type in workshop overview. And then when we are creating links through to these resources, we can do things from dragging and dropping links into the editor through to actually just clicking course link, and then we can choose something from our course navigation. So we could link that through to announcements, or we can come into an individual asset or search through our entire course and link through to those buttons. So for this particular design, really, we've just got 5 images that we've created links for, and then this banner image is consistent across the course. So we uploaded one image that we generated using a AI service, actually. So that's it.
Fab. Thank you so much for letting us digress into some learning design. The other question we have was around Studio and the quizzes that get built in when someone is creating a video. So the question was whether the quizzes can be assigned to sections in the grade book. So the person Jeff, who asked this question, suggested that when he's done this before, the quiz mark has gone to the teacher rather than to the grade book. And do you know if there's anything that can be done around this or the best way to manage that?
Yeah, so if you want it to go into the gradebook, we'd create that as a Canvas assignment and then create the assignment type as an external tool. So that allows us to attach the Studio quiz through to the assignment. Any completed quizzes in that task will then flow through to the gradebook, and we can then have that restricted to an individual section of students if you would like, or it can be deployed to the entire cohort of users too.
Amazing. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to the final section of today's webinar, which is about career relevance and motivation. So this is why many of our adult learners have come back to study. This is why they seek an online approach for that flexibility. So we know that they're goal-driven. We know they're prioritizing education that connects directly to their careers and to their job performance. If they can't see this link through their learning materials or through their professional goals, then they probably start to question the experience and are less likely to stay engaged and less likely to pursue additional learning opportunities. With Canvas, we know that there's great ways to facilitate this clear articulation of learning objectives and their real-world application through our content pages, the purposeful assignment descriptions, explicitly linking to course content, and professional competencies, as well as career outcomes. So the platform's ability to host diverse content types, including case studies, industry-specific examples, project-based learning opportunities as well, really allow for that integration of highly relevant material. We are also enhancing our portfolio feature within Canvas, which is one I'm really excited about and links in such a great way with career enhancement and career progression. We will be launching a portfolio tool that is directly within Canvas, making it really seamless for teachers to create those portfolio experiences and for learners to collate items into a portfolio that they can then share either in a workplace setting or more broadly. Because again, being able to do that seamlessly and being able to drive those professional development opportunities and professional opportunities, we want to make sure that's really clear. There's also analytics tools that we've started to talk about within Canvas that can help our institutions track that learner progress, look for areas around nudging. And we know, again, touching on catalog, again, we've got that opportunity to demonstrate that successful completion of a course or program. We've got customizable certificates that can be offered to really showcase that learning as it's happening. And this gives that immediate recognition. We know that learners are demanding education that fits around their lives and their jobs. And today we really want to explore how Canvas can do that really well. We've gone through a few things. Greg has showed a number of items, but I'll just hand back to Greg now for our last bit.
Thank you. And just for a sneak peek of how the portfolio will sort of appear and sit within Canvas, thought I'd show a quick mock-up. Basically, the left-hand side of the page If the portfolio option is enabled, we'll have a new option for portfolio where users can start to collate and aggregate together things like achievements and evidences that they've got from things like assignment submissions into things that can be sent external to Canvas as well. But what I thought we'd end with is a little more about that credentialing product, because there's some really great ways that students can use this as well. Backpack will sit on the left-hand side of the screen if you're leveraging Canvas credentials. This will show all of the credentials that have been earned within this particular environment. But all users can also log into Canvas credentials directly. And this is the space that they'll continue to have once they have left your organization as well. So they can retain access to these credentials. Any one of these credentials we can click into to get additional information about what was done to earn that micro-credential. And if there are things like certificates attached, we're actually able to come in and print those certificates directly from credentials. Or we can use the sharing options to direct add it through to our LinkedIn profile. We can share a direct link through to an external user. And those links have validators built in. So there's a lot of technology built into these credentials to ensure that even if I'm sharing the image, that we can validate that it was issued by an organization, it hasn't been revoked, and if there is an expiration date attached, that still is valid. So the way that we create all of those elements as an organization, I'm in the back end of Canvas credentials in my issuer. We can see here all of the data around what is the most frequently awarded credential. And probably interestingly, we can come down and see how those credentials are being shared. What social networks are those being shared to? Is that increasing over time? And is that something that maybe we would like to promote internally? But when we do look at an individual credential, I'll come into this particular credential here. All we really need to do is add a name, an image, description, and earning criteria, whether that be a description or a URL. And then from here, the rest of the information is really providing additional context as to what was done, whether that be a custom field, defining the achievement type from course all the way down to something as simple as a webinar. And then we can also attach skills. So this is using an external library of skills, and that's helping the participant understand, the popularity of the skill over time, what careers that skill builds into, and really just helping add that additional context through to the credential that the student is earning. If we want to align to an external standard body, we can do that as well. We can tag this for additional searchability. And then if this is something that is expiration bound, like first aid certificates, or if we're doing internal training for staff, and this isn't to be public facing necessarily, it might be something like a cybersecurity awareness course where we do have a year expiration on that. That can all be defined in the credential, as well as enabling a certificate as well. So those certificates can be custom branded to your organization. And then as we've talked about a little bit, they can also be attached through to a pathway. So a range of different ways that pathways can be developed, whether that be actually promoting a broader pathway of micro-credentials within your organization, or if that's something like the authority to teach pathway we looked at earlier, we can come into the pathway editor and at any point add additional nodes into the pathway. We can adjust. So in this particular requirement, I need to achieve all of the 10 badges, but maybe we actually want to make that set so that we only need to achieve 4 out of the possible 10 credentials until we're deemed complete in that particular milestone. So really, this is the way that we're able to help provide additional context through to students as to what they're actually achieving for completing a course, and then being able to share that more broadly to things like LinkedIn social networking. Farah, going to hand back to you. Is there anything else that you want to add at this point?
No, that was everything. There's been some really fabulous questions in the chat. If there are more questions, we have a few minutes left that we'd love to answer anything else you have. There was also some great product suggestions. I really loved hearing those ideas and seeing those ideas as well. If there are any last questions, feel free to pop those in the chat. We're happy to answer those or show anything if we can. Otherwise, I might hand back to Shrithu to help us wrap things up.
Thank you, Farah. Thank you so much to you both for that really helpful presentation and for sharing such amazing insights with us. Thanks also to the participants for joining us today and participating in the discussion. We'll share the recording of this webinar and a post-event summary article with you in the coming days. Thank you once again, and goodbye.